This is the Buffett Mindset channel where we practice patience and calm wealth building daily. If you enjoy these types of videos, consider liking and subscribing. This will mean a lot to the channel. Power, friend, ain't the strength of your arm, nor the coins in your pocket, nor the noise of your name on other men's tongues. Power is law. Power is alignment. Power is what flows through the man who has discovered the source and refuses to drift from it. Most men spend their lives chasing shadows of power. They seek it in gold, in applause, in position. But shadows vanish when the sun moves. Real power, eternal power, don't shift with the season. It don't crumble when storms rise. It don't bow when men sneer. It is anchored in something older than time, stronger than kings, sharper than steel. King Solomon held this secret, and it made him the richest, wisest man who ever walked the earth. Not because he gathered armies, but because he aligned with law. Not because he stacked coins, but because he sought wisdom above all. And in wisdom, he found that one verse, that one truth, that blueprint of dominion that has outlived every empire. Buffett walks the same path in silence. He may not thunder from pulpits, he may not quote chapter and verse, but his discipline echoes the same law. He builds not on noise, but on principle. He obeys the unseen, and the seen bends to him. That is why markets chase him instead of the other way around. That is why fortune flows to him steady as rivers flow to the sea. Power ain't the gamble. Power is law. Hear a cowboy truth. A man can carry a pistol on his hip, but if he don't know how to aim, if he don't know the law of patience, of breath, of focus, he has no power. Another man, calm and steady, with one bullet and one truth, can command the whole canyon. Power ain't in the tool, it in the law that governs the hand. Now hear me sharp. You say you want wealth, but your barns are empty because your mind is empty. You say you want peace, but your nights are restless because your thoughts are restless. You say you want success, but your days are scattered because your spirit is scattered. Power begins not in the world around you, but in the world within you. And the verse I'll unfold for you proves it plain. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That, partner, is power. Not luck, not chance, not fortune favor, thought, belief, identity. That is what builds kings, and that is what breaks them. The man who thinks small lives small. The man who thinks fear lives fear. The man who thinks faith, who believes law, who speaks alignment, becomes unstoppable. Most men drift because they never master thought. They let their mind wander like cattle without a fence. One day they speak faith, the next day fear. One day they plan bold, the next they crumble in doubt. And the law punishes them, not because fate is cruel, but because law is exact. You become what you repeat. You build what you believe. You inherit what you expect. Buffett don't speak of faith in chapels, but his every investment is a sermon. He sees value where others see clutter. He believes in compounding when others panic. He holds steady when others scatter. And the world bends to his thought, because his thought is law. So here's the truth. The most powerful verse in all of Scripture ain't long, but it holds the blueprint of wealth, peace, and dominion. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Not as he wishes, not as he speaks carelessly, not as others see him, as he thinks in his heart. That thought becomes identity. That identity becomes destiny. That destiny becomes legacy. Hear the sharper edge. Power don't come by hearing the verse once and nodding. Power comes by engraving it into your mind until your very blood obeys it. Repeat it daily. Act it daily. Align every word, every choice, every belief to it. Then you will rise. Drift will die. Fear will scatter. Poverty will bow. For the law cannot be broken, only obeyed or violated. Think of the farmer. He thinks in harvest, though he plants in dirt. He believes in rain, though clouds are empty. He repeats the rhythm daily, not because he sees the crop, but because he knows the law. His thought commands his action commands his field, and in due season, the harvest bows to him. That is the verse in motion. Now let me tell you plain. If your life is chaos, it is because your thought is chaos. If your fortune is empty, it is because your thought is empty. If your spirit is heavy, it is because your thought is heavy. You cannot rise above the thought you repeat in your heart. That is why this verse is power. It don't excuse, it don't bend, it don't pity, it commands. And when you obey it, when you live it, when you engrave it in your heart as law, you will never again ask for permission to prosper. You will never again bow to fear. You will never again drift like a leaf in the wind. You will become anchored, sovereign, unshakable, because the law is eternal. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Dominion, friend, is man's birthright. It was spoken in the beginning. Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion. That ain't a suggestion. That ain't wishful talk. That law. Dominion is the natural extension of thought aligned with truth. For the man who governs himself will, in time, govern the world around him. But here where most men fail, they try to claim dominion outward before they have dominion inward. They want wealth while their mind is scattered. They want respect while their spirit is weak. They want barns full while their thoughts are empty. And so life resists them, not because life is cruel, but because law is exact. Dominion begins inside. First mastery of thought, then mastery of self, then mastery of circumstances. King Solomon ruled a kingdom so vast men traveled months just to hear his wisdom. But his throne was not built on armies alone. It was built on his request for wisdom, on his alignment with the verse. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. He ruled himself, and so he could rule nations. He thought abundance, and gold flowed to him from across the earth. Buffett echoes the same, though he wears no crown. His dominion is not soldiers, but markets. Entire industries bend when he moves. Whole companies reshape when he speaks. Why? Because his dominion is born of inner mastery. He does not chase noise. He governs his own patience, his own thought, his own circle of competence. And the world outside obeys the law that already governs him within. Hear a cowboy truth. A rider who cannot control his own horse will never control the herd. Dominion begins with one mount, one rein, one rhythm. Master that, and the herd follows. Fail that, and chaos spreads. So it is with men. The drifter cannot even govern his mornings, yet he dreams of kingdoms. But the disciplined man masters his rising, his words, his thoughts, his habits, and in time, barns, herds, markets, and nations fall under his rhythm. Now let talk plain. Dominion ain't domination. It ain't tyranny. It ain't noise. True dominion is stewardship. It is alignment with law so complete that the outer world mirrors the inner. A man with dominion don't need to shout. He don't need to prove. His results speak. His barns testify. His peace commands. Most men waste their strength grasping for power they haven't earned. They shout to be heard. They scramble to be seen. But dominion is silent, patient, inevitable. It is the oak tree unmoved, unbent, commanding shade without effort. And hear the sharper truth. Dominion is dangerous to the drifter. Give authority to a man without discipline, and he multiplies chaos. Give wealth to a man without wisdom, and he multiplies ruin. Give position to a man without thought, and he multiplies fear. That is why law withholds dominion until identity is proven. Think of Joseph in Egypt. He was betrayed, enslaved, imprisoned, yet his thought remained faithful, his spirit remained aligned, and when the time came, dominion was handed to him, second only to Pharaoh. Why? Because he had already mastered himself. His dominion was not chance, it was law. So here's the command. Do not chase dominion outward until you have seized it inward. Govern your mornings, govern your words, govern your thoughts, govern your spending, govern your habits. For once you have dominion within, dominion without will follow as surely as rivers run to the sea. Buffett once said, "The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken." He was speaking of dominion. Habits shape identity, identity shapes thought, and thought shapes dominion. Break the chains of drift early, or they will rule you forever. Forge chains of discipline early, and they will build your empire forever. And hear the edge that cuts deepest. Dominion is not optional. Every man will serve something, his fear, his hunger, his anger, his drift. If you do not govern yourself, you will be governed by chains of your own making. Dominion belongs to those who choose it. Slavery belongs to those who drift. So ask yourself plain, who rules you? Your thought or your fear? Your discipline or your drift? Your law or your chaos? For the one who rules himself inherits dominion. The one who drifts becomes servant to men who don't. And when your trail is long, when the fire burns low, when your years are counted, you'll see clear. It was not armies, not applause, not fortune that made kings. It was law. It was thought. It was the verse in motion. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That is dominion. Sovereignty, friend, is the highest proof that the verse is alive in a man. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. When thought is anchored in law, when discipline is welded into bone, when dominion flows outward steady as rivers, sovereignty is born. It is not arrogance. It is not rebellion. It is mastery so complete that no storm can seize you, no crowd can sway you, no fear can bind you. Most men never taste sovereignty because they remain slaves. Not to masters of flesh, but to masters of mind. They are bound by fear of opinion. They crave approval. They measure themselves against neighbors. They rise and fall on applause. Their sovereignty is mortgaged to the crowd, and so they live small, tossed about by every voice but their own. But the sovereign man, the man of law, is untouchable. He may walk among others, but he is not ruled by them. His wealth is not shaken by markets, for his thought holds steady. His spirit is not shaken by storms, for his faith holds firm. His peace is not stolen by insults, for his identity is anchored. The sovereign man belongs to no one but God and law, and in that allegiance he becomes free. King Solomon lived sovereign. When queens traveled far to test him, his answers were not swayed. When gold poured in, his mind was not ruled by greed, for wisdom was his anchor. His sovereignty came from knowing law deeper than applause, truth deeper than treasure. Buffett walks sovereign in markets that chew most men alive. When others panic, he does not. When others clamor for quick gain, he does not. He moves only when his principle says move. He sits only when his principle says sit. That is sovereignty, not reacting to noise, but acting by law. Hear a cowboy truth. A rider who jumps every time the herd stirs has no sovereignty. His horse grows nervous, his herd grows restless, his night is sleepless. Another rider, calm in spirit, steady in hand, governs himself, and so the herd trusts him. Coyotes howl, storms crack, dust swirls, but he sits tall, unmoved. That is sovereignty. Now hear me sharp. Sovereignty ain't given, it ain't bought, it ain't inherited, it is built daily. Every time you refuse fear, you build sovereignty. Every time you silence the noise and obey law, you build sovereignty. Every time you act by principle instead of reaction, you build sovereignty. And brick by brick, you become untouchable. Most men sell their sovereignty cheap. They trade it for approval, for comfort, for applause, for temporary ease. They silence their own voice to echo the crowd. They abandon their own law to follow trends. They live rented lives, and when storms come, their house falls, because it was never their own. But the sovereign man owns himself. His thought is his discipline is his wealth is his peace is his. He does not borrow identity from the crowd. He does not seek permission from the world. He does not beg fortune to favor him. He commands his life by law, and the world cannot deny him. And hear the sharper truth. Sovereignty is the enemy of every chain. Fear cannot hold a sovereign man. Failure cannot define him. Poverty cannot break him. Opinions cannot rule him. He lives by the verse, not by the voices. And so he rises where others fall. He stands where others kneel. He endures where others quit. Think of Christ before Pilate. Pilate held Rome power, armies, judgment. But Christ spoke sovereign. You would have no power over me if it were not given you from above. That is sovereignty. Authority within so strong that no outer chain can bind. So here is the law. Seek sovereignty above applause. Obey law above noise. Guard your thought above fortune. For the sovereign man, though he may walk alone, inherits peace the crowd can never touch. Buffett once said, "You've got to be able to live with yourself before you can live with others." That's sovereignty in plain clothes. The man who cannot govern his own thought, who cannot bear his own silence, will forever be ruled by others. But the man who owns himself, he is free. Ask yourself plain, who rules you? Fear, opinion, fortune, or law? For only one of these grants sovereignty, and the rest are chains. And when your trail is long, when the fire burns low, when the world voices fade, you'll see clear. Sovereignty was never applause, never fortune, never power over others. Sovereignty was mastery of yourself under the verse. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That, partner, is the law of sovereignty. Build it daily, guard it fiercely, live it fully, and you will be unshakable, ungovernable, untouchable, free in mind, rich in spirit, steady in legacy. Eternal order, friend, is the foundation under every law we've spoken. Men rise, men fall, nations flourish, nations fade. But order divine, unchanging, absolute remains. It don't bend to kings, it don't shift with markets, it don't tremble at storms. Eternal order is the spine of creation, the script of destiny, the one law that cannot be bribed, bought, or broken. Most men ignore this truth. They live as though chaos governs, as though luck decides, as though chance writes their days. They drift because they think the universe drifts. They waste because they think life itself wastes. But look closer, at the seasons, at the rivers, at the stars. You'll see order, seed time and harvest, night and day, cause and effect. Law, steady and silent, ruling all. King Solomon wrote it plain. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. That is eternal order. Nothing random, nothing wasted, nothing drifting. Time and rhythm govern all, and wisdom belongs to the man who aligns instead of resists. Buffett himself is no mystic preacher, yet his every move bows to eternal order. He does not gamble, he compounds. He does not chase noise, he obeys cycles. He does not panic at storms, he trusts the law of seasons. His fortune is proof that wealth bows to order. Hear a cowboy truth. You can fight the river all you want, but the river don't break. It keeps flowing. The wise rider don't curse it, he learns to ford it, to follow it, to drink from it. The fool tries to dam it with bare hands, and the current drowns him. So it is with law. You can ignore it, but you cannot escape it. Now hear the sharper edge. Eternal order is not partial. It don't favor rich over poor, white over black, strong over weak. It obeys only alignment. Sow and you reap, skip and you lose. Think fear and you live fear. Think law and you live law. No exceptions, no favoritism, only order. That why the verse, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, is not poetry. It's physics. It's spiritual gravity. It is eternal order applied to thought. What you repeat inside will manifest outside, as surely as seed becomes harvest, as surely as sunrise follows night. Most men resist this truth because it strips them of excuses. If order governs, then fate cannot be blamed, luck cannot be blamed, chance cannot be blamed. Their life is their thought, their discipline, their repetition. They are builders of their own barns, sowers of their own harvest, captains of their own destiny. And that frightens the drifter because it means he is responsible. But the builder, the man who obeys law, sees freedom in this. For if order governs, then destiny is not random. If order governs, then wealth is not chance. If order governs, then peace, power, and prosperity are not fantasies. They are outcomes, guaranteed by law to those who align. Think of the farmer again. He does not plant in despair, wringing his hands, wondering if the seed might grow. He plants in faith, knowing order cannot lie. The soil, the season, the sun, they obey law. His harvest is guaranteed, not by chance, but by order. That same guarantee belongs to the man who plants disciplined thought in the soil of his heart. And here the truth most men miss. Eternal order don't stop at barns and fields. It governs the spirit. Align with law and peace flows. Resist it and anxiety grows. Align with law and freedom multiplies. Drift from it and chains tighten. The same law that builds empires builds souls. Buffett once said, "The world is not driven by fear, greed, or chance. It's driven by incentives and consequences." That order in plain business clothes. Incentives are seeds, consequences are harvest. It is scripture wrapped in market terms. Eternal order unbroken. So here's the final command. Stop looking for secrets. Stop waiting for shortcuts. Stop blaming fate. Eternal order don't bend for excuses. It only bends for alignment. Discipline your thought and you align. Master your habits and you align. Guard your legacy and you align. Build sovereignty and you align. And in alignment, law bends the world to you. Here the edge that crowns it all. You were created for order. That why chaos feels heavy. That why drift feels empty. That why discipline feels right. The soul was built to run on law. And when you live it, you don't just prosper, you feel whole. And when your trail is long, when your fire burns low, when the rain has stopped and the night is still, you'll see plain. Order never failed you. It was you who failed order. And every regret, every loss, every wasted year was drift away from truth. But every victory, every barn filled, every peace tasted, every legacy built was order in motion. That, partner, is the law of eternal order. It is the foundation under sovereignty, the rhythm behind legacy, the forge of mastery, the guardrail of discipline, the seed of thought. Obey it, and you rise. Resist it, and you fall. But you cannot escape it, for it rules all. Listen close now, for this is the last word I'll speak by this fire. You've heard the verse, you've seen it unfold. You know the law. The question now ain't whether it's true, for the seasons prove it, the markets prove it, the scriptures prove it. The question is whether you will obey. Most men leave wisdom at the door of the ear. They nod, they admire, they applaud, and then they return to drift. They treat truth like a song, something to hum for a moment before silence swallows it. But law is not music. Law is command. If you do not engrave it in your mind, if you do not repeat it in your mouth, if you do not live it in your bones, then this night was wasted. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That is no proverb for the wall. That is no verse for memory alone. That is the blueprint of your destiny. Every barn you'll build, every herd you'll tend, every family you'll raise, every name you'll leave, it all bends to this truth. So here's the charge. Guard your thought like a rancher guards his fences. Don't let fear slip in through the cracks. Don't let doubt chew the posts. Don't let distraction scatter the herd. Keep your field clean. Sow only faith, discipline, order, truth. Pull weeds of fear as soon as they sprout. Tend the soil daily. For the mind untended becomes wilderness, but the mind guarded becomes kingdom. Hear a cowboy truth. Storms will come, the sky will darken, the wind will rise, the rains will pound. But the rider who built his corral strong, who tied his ropes tight, who trusted the law of his craft, does not fear. His herd holds, his camp stands. He endures because his order was set before the storm arrived. So it is with you. Set your thought now, build your discipline now, anchor your soul now. For when the storm comes, and it will, it's too late to build fences. Buffett didn't wait for crisis to practice patience. He practiced it in quiet seasons. So when panic struck the markets, his calm was already law. Solomon didn't wait for kings to arrive to study wisdom. He sought it in the stillness, so when nations came, his answers were already rooted. That the secret the drifter misses. Law is forged in silence, long before applause or storms. And here the sharper edge. Your future is not waiting. Time is burning. Every sunrise drops another coin in your hand. Every sunset spends it. You don't get it back. Drift wastes it. Discipline multiplies it. Sovereignty redeems it. Eternal order demands it. And when the ledger of your life is tallied, you will answer for how you spent every coin. So let this night be the line in the sand. No more drift, no more delay, no more waiting for perfect time, for luck, for chance. Begin now. Speak it aloud. Truth is eternal. I build on law. My success is rooted in spiritual order. Say it until your bones obey it. Write it until your mind remembers it. Live it until your children inherit it. For this is power, not applause, not fortune, not chance. Power is thought aligned with law. Power is discipline repeated until it becomes identity. Power is sovereignty unmoved by fear. Power is eternal order flowing through a man who obeys. That is the power that built Solomon's throne, Buffett fortune, Ford industry, Edison light, Carnegie steel. And that is the same power offered to you if you will take it. But take heed, this ain't for the casual listener. This ain't for the man who nods and forgets. This is for the builder. This is for the seeker. This is for the man who is done drifting, done excusing, done waiting. This is for the man who will rise tomorrow with verse in his mouth and law in his mind. So I ask you plain, with the fire dying low and the rain whispering soft, who will you be? Another drifter buried in excuses? Or the sovereign man, rich in thought, rich in spirit, rich in legacy, aligned with eternal law? Choose now. For drift is easy, but it ends in regret. Law is hard, but it ends in peace. And peace is the true wealth, the true inheritance, the true power. And when your trail is long behind you, when your fire has burned its last, when your name is spoken only by your children, let them say of you, not that you drifted, not that you wasted, not that you waited. Let them say, he lived by law, he built by thought, he left legacy, he walked sovereign, he obeyed eternal order, and because of him, we walk free. That, partner, is the final word. That is power. Carry it, live it, guard it, and never again ask for permission to prosper. Now hear me clear, because too many men stumble here. They nod at truth, they even begin to obey, but the first storm that rattles their roof, the first whisper of doubt, the first long night with no harvest in sight, and they drift back. They forget that law is not broken by storm, nor by waiting. Law is eternal, and the man who abandons the law in hardship is like a rider who jumps off his horse at the first shadow. He ends up walking alone through the dark. The verse don't promise an easy trail, it promises an exact one. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That means storms reveal your thought as much as harvests do. If you panic, it's because panic was planted in you long ago. If you endure, it's because discipline was already your seed. Don't curse the storm, it just shows you what was sown. Buffett never built his fortune in calm weather alone. His greatest gains came in storms when markets collapsed, when others fled. But because his thought was anchored, because his patience was law, the storm became his harvest. Solomon wrote that wisdom guards in famine as well as feast, and the same is true for you. Adversity don't break the law, it enforces it. Hear a cowboy truth. A greenhorn might talk big around the fire, boasting of how he'll ride through anything. But when the thunder cracks and the herd surges, his hands shake, his breath falters, his horse senses fear and throws him. The seasoned rider don't talk loud, but when the storm hits, he sits calm, reins steady, eyes forward. He don't master the storm, he masters himself. That is the difference. And hear the sharper truth, temptation is a storm too. Most men lose not from drought or debt, but from the whisper of ease. They trade discipline for comfort. They trade legacy for a quick bite. They drift because they cannot say no. But sovereignty ain't proven by saying yes to every desire. It's proven by saying no to what breaks the law. The verse don't bow to lust, greed, or pride. It bows only to thought and law. King Solomon himself faltered here. Though he built wisdom, though he gathered riches, though he commanded nations, he drifted in later years by opening doors to compromise. His heart was divided, and so his kingdom fractured. Even the wisest of men can fall when thought drifts from law. His story is not just glory, it is warning. But Buffett shows the other side. He has lived decades with opportunity flashing around him like lightning, and yet he says no to almost all of it. Not because he cannot, but because he knows that law favors focus. He obeys the verse by guarding his thought from distraction, his hand from scattering. That's why his barns stand while others fall. So here is the law in hardship and temptation. Do not measure by comfort, do not measure by applause, do not measure by ease. Measure only by alignment. Does your thought obey law? Does your word reflect order? Does your action build legacy? If yes, then storms will only prove you, temptations will only sharpen you, time will only multiply you. Most men want the crown but reject the cross. They want dominion but not discipline. They want sovereignty but not sacrifice. But law don't hand crowns to the untested. Every great man, from Solomon to Buffett, from Joseph in prison to Lincoln in failure, was tested. And the test was never random. It was always order, always thought, always the verse unfolding. Think of the farmer again. He don't curse the long season between planting and harvest. He knows it law. He don't panic when weeds rise. He bends and pulls them. He don't quit when storms flatten part of the field. He replants. He don't waste his life waiting for perfect weather. He obeys law in every weather. And in time, his barns are full. So here is the call when storms come. Sit tall in the saddle. When temptation whispers, keep your reins tight. When waiting feels endless, trust the law. For order never fails. The verse never lies. Thought always becomes being. Identity always becomes destiny. And here the crown of it. Destiny ain't chance. It ain't lottery. It ain't the roll of dice in heaven. Destiny is order. Destiny is law. Destiny is the verse in motion. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Think drift, live drift. Think discipline, live discipline. Think sovereignty, live sovereignty. Think order, live eternal order. And when your trail is long, when you look back over years, you'll see plain every harvest was law, every loss was law, every storm was law. And the only difference between the man who rose and the man who fell was thought, guarded or wasted. So ride on with this fire in your chest. Storms cannot break you, temptation cannot chain you, time cannot waste you if you obey law. For you are not chance, you are not drift, you are thought in motion, law in flesh, destiny in progress. That is the truth. That is power. The law of harvest has always been the most misunderstood truth. For men believe they can sow carelessly and reap richly. They imagine they can scatter weeds and gather wheat. They hope they can live in drift yet die in destiny. But law is not mocked, and order is not tricked. The harvest never lies. What you planted, whether in silence or in noise, whether in discipline or in drift, whether in fear or in faith, will rise and meet you in due season, and it always comes multiplied. Sow a thought once, repeat it again, hold it until it shapes your identity, and the harvest of that thought will cover your life like a field ready for scythe. The farmer don't sow one kernel and reap one kernel. He reaps hundreds for every seed. So it is with your mind. Every careless word multiplies into patterns. Every repeated fear multiplies into paralysis. Every practiced discipline multiplies into destiny. Buffett knew this law, though he may not dress it in scripture. His entire empire rests on compounding, on the patient sowing of capital into fertile ground, waiting season after season until the field multiplies beyond imagination. Solomon knew the same, for he wrote that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it shall eat its fruit. Every word you speak is a seed, every habit you practice is a seed, every belief you nurse is a seed. And in time, those seeds become your barns, whether they stand full or stand empty. The cowboy on the plain knows this too, for he plants in spring knowing autumn will not cheat him. He don't shout at the sky when his harvest is small because he knows it was small planting. He don't curse the soil when weeds choke his crop because he knows he neglected his rows. He don't envy the neighbor with fat herds and tall corn because he knows the neighbor kept to discipline when he himself drifted. The harvest is always honest, and that honesty is both blessing and judgment. It blesses the man who obeyed, who planted carefully, who watered faithfully, who guarded the rows daily. It judges the man who drifted, who neglected, who planted nothing yet expected plenty. Harvest never lies, partner. Most men live blind to this. They treat today like it vanishes at midnight. They waste a sunrise as if no consequence will come, but law keeps account. The thought you planted today will not die in silence. It will rise in 10 years as a habit, in 20 years as a destiny, in 40 years as a legacy. Buffett fortune is not one choice, but thousands of days sown into the same rhythm. Solomon wisdom is not one proverb, but thousands of meditations sown into the soil of his heart. And your life too, whether full or barren, whether rich in peace or strangled by fear, is nothing more than the harvest of seeds sown long ago. This is why discipline is wealth, why thought is power, why sovereignty is freedom. For a man cannot reap what he has not planted, but he cannot fail to reap what he has planted. The field obeys. The verse holds true. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, and so will his barns be, his herds, his family, his destiny. Drift sows weeds, and weeds always choke. Fear sows paralysis, and paralysis always binds. Faith sows action, and action always multiplies. Discipline sows legacy, and legacy always endures. The law of harvest is merciless, but it is also generous. It gives back exactly what you demanded by your sowing. That is why storms cannot break the law, and waiting cannot cancel it. If you have planted, you will reap. If you have sown nothing, you will reap nothing. And the fool who thinks he can wait until autumn to begin planting learns too late that law don't bend to delay. He weeps at empty fields because he laughed at spring. You, partner, must not make that mistake. You must plant daily, you must guard your thought, you must repeat your rhythm, you must water your habits, you must sow your belief. For the harvest is coming whether you prepare or not, and it will reveal exactly what you sowed. The man who lives by law does not fear the harvest, for he knows it will come in his favor. He don't measure by today's weather, he don't tremble at today's sky, because his mind is fixed on the certainty that seed multiplies after its kind. This is why the drifter envies the disciplined, why the fearful envy the faithful, why the weak envy the strong, not because fate played favorites, but because each man is now eating what he once planted. You cannot sow envy and reap peace. You cannot sow excuses and reap discipline. You cannot sow delay and reap destiny. Yet most men spend their lives shouting at the ground, angry that it won't yield wheat when they only scattered weeds. The ground is blameless. The law is blameless. The fault is only in the hand that sowed, and the hand always follows the thought. That is why Scripture calls thought the root, the fountain, the wellspring of life, for from it flows everything else, every word, every deed, every harvest. Buffett illustrates this as plain as Solomon ever did. He sows patience, he reaps compounding. He sows discipline, he reaps stability. He sows long horizons, he reaps enduring wealth. If he had sown gambling, panic, or envy, his barns would be as empty as the drifter. Yet because his thought was anchored, his sowing was consistent, and his harvest is endless. You must see the same. A single sunrise is not empty. A single choice is not small. Every morning holds seed, and every seed becomes harvest. The cowboy knows this too, for he does not skip the small chores. He mends the fence though no one is watching. He waters the herd though the clouds look dry. He tends the field though the neighbors mock his sweat. He knows that small sowings build large barns, that neglected chores become famine, that faithfulness in the hidden hours writes destiny in the open. Most men refuse this discipline. They want to plant one day and harvest the next. They want to water once and reap forever. They want to live like drifters and die like kings. But law is not mocked. It gives only what you demanded through repetition. A single kernel ignored is nothing, but thousands ignored become ruin. A single habit skipped is small, but years of skipping become wasted destiny. A single fearful word is faint, but decades of fear become paralysis. The man who wakes today and chooses drift is already sowing his regret 20 years from now. The man who wakes today and chooses law is already sowing his legacy 20 years from now. Time is the multiplier. Law is the engine. Your thought is the seed. Together they write the harvest you cannot escape. Solomon wrote that he who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. The coward waits for perfect weather and dies in famine. The builder plants in faith and inherits plenty. This is why you must silence excuses and begin sowing now, before the day is gone. Don't wait for applause. Don't wait for certainty. Don't wait for ease. Sow now, guard now, repeat now, because the harvest will not delay for your hesitation, but it will surely come for your obedience. Buffett once said the chains of habit are too light to feel until they are too heavy to break. That is harvest explained in a single sentence. Every light chain grows heavier, every repeated thought grows stronger, every ignored weed grows thicker. The harvest multiplies silently until it stands taller than you can control. That is why discipline must begin at once, why sovereignty must be forged early, why thought must be guarded daily. The harvest cannot be bribed, but it can be built, and the man who builds daily, faithfully, without excuse, will never lack. The harvest reveals a man more honestly than his words ever could, for the barns cannot lie, the fields cannot flatter, the herds cannot deceive. They stand as testimony to the seeds once sown. This is why the wise man examines not only his barns but his thoughts, for the barns are but the mirror of the mind. A poor harvest is not random chance, it is a revelation. It shows you the truth of what you planted, what you neglected, what you believed, and what you refused to guard. The fool looks upon his empty fields and curses the sky, curses his neighbor, curses the season. The wise man looks upon his field and says, "This is law, this is my sowing. I will learn, I will change, I will plant anew." That is the difference between ruin and redemption. Solomon warned that the sluggard says there is a lion in the streets as excuse not to work, but his poverty comes anyway, swift and unyielding. Buffett echoes the same when he says the market is designed to transfer wealth from the impatient to the patient. Both are speaking of harvest, law in action, discipline rewarded, excuses punished. The cowboy has no time for blame, for the land don't bend to complaint. He rises, straps his boots, shoulders the plow, and tends the rows again. He knows that yesterday neglect cannot be undone, but today's seed can be sown. He knows that a field lost one year can be restored the next if he will only return to law. This is why there is always hope, always a path back to plenty, if a man will repent of drift and return to sowing. But that hope is not cheap. It demands discipline, demands endurance, demands repetition. For the soil don't pity, it only multiplies. You cannot charm it, you cannot trick it, you cannot demand it, you can only obey it. And obedience is not in speech but in sweat. Most men waste their lives hoping for harvest they never planted, mourning harvest they themselves destroyed, or envying harvest they never worked for. Their envy blinds them to the truth. They could have barns too if only they would sow. But envy is easier than labor, excuses are easier than discipline, drift is easier than order, easy roads end in famine, hard roads end in plenty. This is the eternal law, the same whether you walk in the deserts of Solomon day, the markets of Buffett day, or the plains of the cowboy day. The fields don't change, the seasons don't shift, the law don't bend. It has always been and it will always be. And so the question is not whether the harvest will come, it will. The question is only what will it reveal about you? Will it show you faithful or drifting? Will it show barns filled or barns empty? Will it echo legacy or echo regret? The law is merciless here, but also merciful, for it gives you chance each dawn to sow anew. You can curse yesterday, but you cannot change it. You can waste today, but you cannot escape its harvest. You can plant fear or faith, drift or discipline, chaos or order. The soil does not argue, it only multiplies. So ride steady, plant wisely, speak carefully, act daily. For soon enough the season will turn, the harvest will rise, and your life will stand as proof of every seed you sowed. The true weight of harvest is seen not only in what a man eats, but in what he leaves behind. For the barns of one season may feed a family, but the barns of a lifetime feed generations. Legacy is nothing more than compounded harvest, the accumulation of years of faithful sowing, the rhythm repeated so long that it outlives the man himself. Solomon said a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, and he spoke not merely of coins but of patterns, not merely of land but of wisdom. For a son who inherits cattle but no skill will lose the herd, but a son who inherits law will build herds of his own. Buffett proves the same in his insistence that fortune without discipline destroys, that wealth handed over without wisdom is a curse and not a blessing. He knows that the truest inheritance is not the pile of gold, but the mind that can multiply it again and again. This is why he has chosen to give much of his fortune away, for he understands that his children's true inheritance is the pattern of patience, the rhythm of discipline, the law of compounding that he modeled before their eyes. The cowboy too knows that the young hands watching him learn more from his silence than from his speeches, that the boy who sees his father mend the fence at dawn learns that mending is the law, that the girl who sees her father keep his word even in hardship learns that truth is wealth. Legacy is not taught, it is caught. And it is caught in the daily sowing, in the barns built one season at a time, in the steady obedience to law that turns fathers into examples, mothers into anchors, families into fortresses. Most men waste this chance. They drift not only their own years, but their children's years.
They hand down fear, excuses, weakness, chaos. Their sons inherit anxiety, their daughters inherit instability, their families inherit broken barns and bitter memories. And then they wonder why the pattern repeats, why poverty and fear cling to bloodlines like burrs on a coat. But law explains it. The harvest multiplies beyond you. Your thought don't just shape your days, it shapes theirs. Your discipline don't just build your barns, it builds theirs. Your drift don't just waste your years, it wastes theirs. This is why the harvest is so heavy, for it stretches beyond your lifetime. Solomon saw it when he said, "One generation passes and another comes, yet the earth abides forever." The fields don't forget. They remember the seeds of fathers and they reveal them in the lives of sons. This is why you must sow as if your children are watching, for they are. They will live in the barns you build or in the ruins you leave. They will drink from the wells you dug or thirst from the wells you neglected. They will walk in the light of your law or stumble in the shadows of your drift. And when your bones are dust, when your name is carved in stone, your harvest will still be speaking. It will speak in the way your family prays or refuses to pray, in the way they rise or refuse to rise, in the way they build or refuse to build. The verse still holds. As you think, so are you. And as you think, so will they be, unless someone breaks the chain. If you inherit drift, you must refuse it. If you inherit fear, you must uproot it. If you inherit chaos, you must burn it out of the field and plant new seed. For law is merciless, but it is also merciful. It will multiply whatever you sow, good or bad, but it always gives you a chance to sow anew. Each sunrise is mercy. Each day is a chance to plant different. And if you plant faithfully today, your grandchildren will thank you tomorrow. This is legacy. This is harvest multiplied beyond one man into a bloodline, beyond one season into centuries.
The harvest of a single man does not stop at his doorstep, for the law of multiplication spills his seed into every life he touches. What begins in thought becomes identity. What becomes identity becomes habit. What becomes habit becomes legacy. And legacy does not stay bound to family alone. Communities rise or fall by the seeds their leaders plant. Nations prosper or collapse by the harvest of their builders. Solomon's wisdom filled not only his palace, but the land of Israel. His sowing of law became rivers of wealth that flowed through every village, every merchant, every household. When he walked in alignment, the people feasted. When he drifted, the people bore the famine. Buffett barns, though built of capital and compounding, reach far beyond Omaha. His patience steadies markets. His discipline instructs millions who will never meet him. His choices ripple through businesses, employees, shareholders, generations unborn. This is the weight of harvest. It multiplies outward, silently shaping destinies of men who never sowed the original seed. The cowboy knows this too, for when he tends his herd well, the whole town eats. When he sows his fields faithfully, neighbors share in the abundance. But if he drifts, if he neglects, if his barns collapse, the town goes hungry with him. No man sows only for himself. Every harvest is communal, whether in blessing or in curse. This is why the verse is so powerful, why it holds nations in its grip. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And as a generation thinketh, so is its destiny. If a people sow fear, they reap tyranny. If a people sow greed, they reap collapse. If a people sow discipline, they reap freedom. If a people sow wisdom, they reap peace. Every revolution, every empire, every nation rise and fall can be traced to seeds once planted in thought, watered in speech, repeated in action, multiplied in harvest. Law never lies, and nations are not exempt. The fool thinks his thought is private, his drift hidden, his fear inconsequential. But fear multiplies, drift spreads, excuses echo. One man sows it, another man catches it, a generation reaps it. The wise know this and guard themselves not only for their own sake, but for all who will be touched by their harvest. Solomon warned that righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Buffett shows the same principle in commerce, that sound discipline builds industries, while greed and drift burn them down. And the cowboy, though he may not speak in books or markets, knows it in his bones. His diligence or his laziness shapes not just his barn, but the life of every neighbor who depends on his herd. This is the frightening and beautiful truth. Your sowing is not small. It shapes more than you will ever see. It multiplies far beyond your reach. A careless word can cripple a generation. A faithful habit can strengthen one. A man who obeys law quietly in his home may unknowingly plant seeds that ripple into nations, into centuries, into empires. That is why harvest is weighty, why you must not drift, why you must sow with fear and trembling, with faith and fire. For your barns are not your own, your seed is not your own, your harvest is not your own. It belongs to the future, and the future will eat what you plant today. What a man sows into the world will in time return to him, for the circle of law always closes, and the harvest a man releases outward eventually finds its way back to his doorstep. Nations repay their builders with honor, and they repay their drifters with shame. Families echo the names of fathers who sowed well, and they forget the ones who wasted. Communities gather around barns that overflow, but they scatter from barns that lie empty. This is the cycle that cannot be broken. The seeds you scatter outward will one day knock upon your own door. Solomon himself learned this bitter truth, for though his wisdom brought him riches and his riches brought him power, his compromises sowed weakness that returned upon his house, and his kingdom fractured. Even the greatest of men are not immune to the circle of harvest. Buffett stands as a contrast, for his sowing of patience and focus has returned to him not only in wealth but in trust, respect, and influence beyond measure. He did not scatter panic, so panic does not rule him. He did not sow noise, so noise does not govern him. He sowed discipline, and discipline surrounds him. The cowboy too lives in this circle, for when he tends his herd with care, the town honors him, feeds him, remembers him. But if he neglects, if he drifts, if he cheats the measure, the same town will turn its back, and his name will fade from the saloon walls. Most men think they can outwit this return, that they can sow carelessly and somehow reap differently, that they can cheat the circle of law. They imagine that their compromises will be forgotten, their neglect overlooked, their drift excused. But law is eternal and exact. It records every seed, and in time it brings them back multiplied. That is why the verse is power, why it is dangerous, why it is inescapable. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. What he is will not stay hidden. It will ripple outward, it will multiply, and then it will circle back. If he is faithful, faith will return to him. If he is fearful, fear will return to him. If he is disciplined, discipline will uphold him. If he is drifting, drift will ruin him. The law is merciful in this, for it gives him chance daily to sow different, to begin again, to cut off the weeds and plant new rows. But it is merciless in this too. It always returns what was sown. The wise man accepts this with humility, planting carefully, speaking carefully, guarding his thought daily, for he knows that tomorrow visitors are today's seeds. The fool laughs and scatters, and then wails when the circle comes back with famine. But whether in laughter or in tears, the circle completes itself. You cannot outrun it. And when your trail is long, when your hair is gray, when your barns are tall or empty, you will see clearly that the circle has closed, that the life before you is the return of the sowing behind you. That is why this law is weight and warning, why it should sober your mind and steady your hand. For nothing is forgotten, nothing is wasted, nothing is overlooked. The harvest always returns. The man who grasps this law with both hands becomes patient beyond measure, for he no longer mistakes silence for failure or delay for denial. He knows the field works in secret, the soil multiplies unseen, and the harvest takes its time to rise. While the drifter panics at quiet ground, the wise man waits, for he knows the return is certain. He has seen the law too many times to doubt it now. Solomon wrote that there is a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, and the gap between those times is not waste but order. Buffett has said the stock market is a device for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient, and in those words lies the same eternal truth. The man who waits in discipline inherits the field. The one who rushes in panic loses all. The cowboy knows this on the prairie, for when the spring rains fall and the seeds disappear beneath the earth, he does not dig them up in fear, demanding to see proof. He trusts the rhythm, he waters when needed, he keeps the weeds away, and in due time the green shoots appear. Patience is not passivity, it is obedience to law. It is the refusal to abandon sowing just because the harvest has not yet shown its face. Most men fail here, for they want the fruit of oak trees while planting like children. They demand a forest tomorrow, though they only scattered seed today. And when nothing appears overnight, they declare the law false and drift away, only to find their neighbor harvesting years later from the same seed they mocked. Law laughs at their impatience and multiplies only for those who endure. This is why the patient man looks calm when others are restless, why he smiles when others gnash their teeth, why he prospers when others collapse. He knows that delay is not denial, that silence is not failure, that order never forgets. His barns are assured not by magic, but by discipline. He rises daily, repeats daily, sows daily, guards daily, and though the ground looks empty, he trusts the unseen. Solomon said, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it again." Buffett echoes it in his steady hand, buying when others flee, waiting when others scatter, harvesting when others starve. The cowboy embodies it when he tends his herd through barren winters, knowing spring grass will return. This patience is sovereignty in practice, for it refuses to bow to the noise of delay. The man who knows law does not ask if the harvest will come, only when. And because he is certain, he works without panic, he sows without haste, he waits without fear. Most men never taste this peace, for they are slaves to urgency, addicted to results, blind to rhythm. They dig up seeds before they sprout, they quit before the harvest, they scatter their lives chasing immediacy. Their barns stand empty not because law failed, but because they abandoned the field before it bore fruit. But the patient man, his barns fill slowly, quietly, steadily, until one day they overflow, and then all who mocked him come asking his secret. He tells them what Solomon wrote, what Buffett proved, what the cowboy lived. The harvest belongs to the patient, for order rewards only those who endure. Authority is born when faith matures into command, when a man is so aligned with law that his words carry weight beyond mere sound, shaping the course of events around him. Authority is not shouting, it is not arrogance, it is not the noise of ambition. True authority is quiet, steady, irresistible, because it rests not on personality, but on alignment. When a man lives in law long enough, the world begins to mirror his thought. His speech becomes seed that cannot be denied. His decisions echo louder than storms. Solomon's authority was such that kings and queens traveled across deserts to sit at his feet, not because he raised armies, but because he raised wisdom, and wisdom carried a weight armies could not. Buffett's authority is such that entire markets shift when he speaks a single sentence, not because he seeks attention, but because decades of sowing patience and discipline have made his voice trustworthy. The cowboy too carries authority in his silence, for when he enters the saloon after a storm, no one doubts that the herd survived if he says it did. His calm is his crown, his discipline his proof, his law his authority. Most men counterfeit this, raising their voice, demanding respect, forcing attention. But their words are empty because their sowing is empty. They have no authority because they have no alignment. They drift, they scatter, they neglect, and then they shout as though volume could replace law. But authority cannot be faked. It is forged only by obedience, proven only by harvest. Authority is the extension of sovereignty outward, the point where inner mastery governs outer reality. A man with authority does not beg opportunity. Opportunity bends to him. He does not chase wealth. Wealth flows toward him. He does not plead for respect. Respect crowns him. His barns speak. His habits speak. His peace speaks louder than his mouth ever could. This is the authority of law, the kind that Christ himself displayed when he calmed storms with a word, when he healed with a touch, when he spoke with such clarity that crowds marveled, for he taught as one having authority and not as the scribes. His alignment with eternal order was perfect, and so his authority was unshakable. This is not magic, it is law. The man who aligns fully, who sows faithfully, who lives patiently, who walks in vision and acts in faith, will find that his speech carries power, his silence carries weight, his presence carries gravity. Authority is the harvest of alignment. It cannot be stolen, it cannot be borrowed, it cannot be faked. And when your trail is long, when your barns are filled, when your children rise to call you blessed, it will be seen that your authority was not given by men but forged by law, proven by harvest, sealed by legacy. Then the verse will ring true again. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, and so is his authority. Immortality of influence is the final proof of overflow, for though no man escapes death, The man who lived by law leaves a voice that speaks long after his lips are silent. His barns may fall to dust, his cattle may be scattered, his gold may be spent, but the seed of his thought continues to multiply in minds he never met. This is the immortality granted not by flesh, but by order, the kind that turns one man's obedience into a river of legacy flowing through centuries. Solomon's wisdom outlived him, written in proverbs that still steady men thousands of years after his throne crumbled. Buffett's principles will outlive him, for his discipline has shaped entire generations of builders who will carry his patience into industries unborn. The cowboy too, though nameless to history, achieves this immortality when his children walk the same fence lines he built, when his grandchildren speak his sayings by the fire, when his law of labor and faithfulness becomes the inheritance of a clan that will never forget. This immortality is not granted by chance, nor by title, nor by wealth, but only by law. Drift leaves nothing behind, fear leaves nothing behind, greed leaves only ruin. But discipline, sovereignty, vision, faith, peace, and overflow carve grooves into eternity, grooves that men and nations continue to walk long after the builder is gone. Most men live as if death erases all, wasting their days in noise and their nights in fear, never realizing that their thought will echo whether they wish it or not. A fearful father sows fear that will ripple through sons he never meets. A drifting leader sows weakness that will corrode nations after his bones are dust. But the man who obeys law sows rivers of wisdom that continue to water fields when his name is only a whisper. This is why Solomon said the memory of the just is blessed, for memory itself becomes harvest. A man's influence is immortalized not in monuments but in repetition, in the way his principles are lived out by those who caught them. Buffett will not be remembered for every dollar he made, but for the mindset he modeled, patience, compounding, discipline. The cowboy will not be remembered for the exact herd he owned, but for the law he lived, diligence, endurance, faith. This immortality is the truest wealth, for it cannot be stolen, cannot be taxed, cannot be silenced. It is carried in hearts, in habits, in harvests. And when your trail is long ended, when your fire is ash, when your stone is carved, your immortality will be measured not by what you gathered, but by what you sowed into others, not by what you held, but by what you overflowed. That is law's final gift, the immortality of influence, the echo of obedience ringing beyond death. And when those echoes are heard, the verse will prove true again. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, not only in his lifetime, but in the lifetime shaped by his thought long after he is gone. Immortality of influence is not the end, but the folding back into eternal order, for the seeds sown by one man's obedience become threads in the great fabric that stretches across ages. A single thought aligned with law does not vanish. It takes its place in the rhythm of creation, echoing beyond empires, outliving kings, weaving into the cycles that no storm can erase. Solomon's wisdom did not die with his bones. It became part of Scripture, part of eternal record, part of the law itself by which generations measure their lives. Buffett's discipline will not vanish when his fortune is divided, for the principles he proved are already etched into the marketplace, already instructing men who will never read his name. The cowboy's simple faithfulness, his fences mended, his wells dug, his barns raised, may seem small, but in the eyes of eternal order, it is seed planted into cycles that will water his descendants long after his dust is scattered. This is the circle complete. Thought becomes being, being becomes habit, habit becomes harvest, harvest becomes legacy, legacy becomes influence, influence becomes immortality, and immortality becomes order again, feeding the soil from which new seeds rise. Most men imagine themselves temporary, their lives swallowed by time, their deeds forgotten. But law declares otherwise. Nothing is wasted, nothing is lost, nothing disappears into the dark. Every thought is recorded, every seed multiplies, every harvest echoes. Drift too becomes immortal, though in ruin, the wasted seed poisons soil for generations. The cowardice of one leader cripples nations yet unborn. The compromise of one father chains children he will never meet. But discipline, sovereignty, peace, and faith become immortal in blessing. The seed multiplies into forests, the wells become rivers, the barns become fortresses for generations. This is why eternal order is called eternal, for it folds all men, all choices, all sowing into itself and multiplies them without fail. You are not small, your sowing is not small, your thought is not wasted. Every line of your life is being written into the scroll of order, where drift is recorded as drift, where discipline is recorded as discipline, where faith is recorded as faith. And when history moves on, when nations rise and fall, when your name is long forgotten by men, the law will still remember what you sowed, and its fruit will still shape the living. That is immortality and truth, not the fame of one age, not the applause of crowds, but the eternal multiplication of law through your obedience. And when your trail is long over, when your fire has burned to ash, when silence covers your name, the law will still be speaking in fields you planted, still be echoing in lives you touched, still be multiplying seeds you sowed. Then it will be seen that nothing was wasted, that eternal order has carried your obedience into forever, and the verse will once again stand proven, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, not only for his days, but for all days that follow. And so the circle closes, not in silence, but in a summons, for the law that has carried kings and cowboys, financiers and prophets, does not merely tell stories of the past, it demands decision in the present. You have seen the path, thought shaping identity, identity shaping habit, habit shaping harvest, harvest shaping legacy, legacy shaping influence, influence stretching into immortality, and immortality folding back into eternal order. The question now is not whether the law works. It has been proven by centuries, by empires, by men who rose from nothing, and by men who fell from everything. The question is whether you will obey it. Will you guard your thought like treasure, or scatter it like dust? Will you sow daily though no applause is given, or will you drift waiting for comfort? Will you endure storms as proof of discipline, or will you abandon the field when the sky darkens? Will you build barns for your children, or will you leave them famine? Will you walk with vision toward horizons you may never see, or will you trade eternity for immediacy? Will you speak with faith and build with patience until authority crowns you, or will you waste your years envying those who did? Law does not flatter, it multiplies. It does not pity, it rewards or it punishes, and it waits for no man. Each dawn is seed time, each dusk is the closing of the ledger, each word you speak is a command to your harvest, each action you take is a root growing under the soil of destiny. The cowboy by the fire knows it, for he tends his herd even when tired. He mends the fence even when weary, because he knows that law don't bend for excuses. Buffett in his quiet office knows it, for he studies when others guess, he waits when others panic, because he knows that law don't bend for trends. Solomon knew it in his palace, for he wrote Proverbs not as poetry but as structure, because he knew that law don't bend for kings. And you must know it now, sitting where you are, hearing these words. This is not a tale told for passing time. This is a charge laid upon you. You cannot hear it and remain neutral. You cannot drift having been shown the law. To do nothing is to choose drift, and drift is seed, and seed becomes harvest, and harvest becomes regret. But to obey is to sow discipline, and discipline is seed, and seed becomes harvest, and harvest becomes peace, and peace becomes overflow, and overflow becomes immortality. The trail lies before you. The fire is burning low. The rain is easing off. The verse still whispers its command, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Think drift, and drift is your destiny. Think law, and law is your crown. You are free to choose, but you are not free to escape the harvest of your choice. The law is eternal, the order unbroken, the circle certain. Choose well, for eternity itself will echo what you plant tonight.